Hey there guys! Today we're going to be doing a tutorial on how to do some of the effects in the music video for DMB by ASAP Rocky. This is a pretty cool effect. I've seen it before. It's kind of like a scrolling collage effect. An earlier version of it can be seen here in an old Saturday Night Live intro from 1975. This is the earliest version I could think of, although I'm sure there's even earlier versions than that. Alright, let's get right into it. I've downloaded a bunch of stock footage in order to make this composition. Keep in mind, it probably won't look as cool as the ASAP video, but it's going to teach you how to get the effect done and do it on your own, which will probably look a lot better than mine. If you haven't seen my last video on how to use the roto brush, I recommend checking that out, as I'm not going to fully go into how to use the tool here, but it is necessary for this effect. In order to create this effect, we're going to be taking full advantage of the null object feature in After Effects. Essentially, we'll be cutting out images, then parenting them to the null object, which will allow us to pan across our image as we create a composition with looping or playing video in the foreground and the background. I'm going to get started with this image of a girl using her laptop. I'm going to start with our roto brush tool and remove the background of this image. Again, if you aren't familiar with this tool, I recommend watching my previous video in which I explain how to use this in detail. So once your roto brush tool has done its thing, I'm going to right-click the clip and hit Pre-Compose. Then I'll click Move All Attributes into the new composition and you're all good. This isn't the best selection I've ever made, but it will help us understand the concept. I'll make this a little bigger and put this here for now. Then I'll grab my first background texture and put that right underneath. That's the beginning, and as you can see, we have a background, but I'm going to have this background start right about here. Then I'll grab another clip for a background and put that right around here. Our laptop girl is on the border between these multiple backgrounds. At this point, I'm going to make a null object. I'll click Layer, New, Null Object. We'll use the parent Pick Whip tool to drag all these elements up to the null object. The null object is basically an invisible object in which you can apply effects, parameters, and keyframe animations, and then have multiple other objects parented to it. Parented just means when you make a change to the null object, everything else will also have that change applied to it. However, when you make a change to one of these clips on their own, only that clip will have that change applied to it. Let's say you want your composition to be 20 seconds long. I'll press Option and right bracket on both of these elements, shortening them to that time. And then I will also use my end key to shorten our composition to that same point. This is 20 seconds exactly. I'll then click Trim Comp to Work Area, and as you can see, our composition is 20 seconds. So this is where I want our video to start. I'll click the keyframe animation button, and it will create a keyframe right at the beginning of our timeline. Then I'll go to the very end of our timeline, and I'll create one more keyframe by moving our composition down a ways, maybe to about there. You can then test the speed of the composition by playing it back. This is going to be pretty CPU heavy, so you may have to turn your playback resolution down to half or even a quarter. That's a pretty good speed. That looks about the same as the music video. You can probably see where the rest of this process will take us, but I'll continue on now. I'm going to use some other elements here to create some more foreground pieces and divide up the different background segments. I'll put our null object at the bottom there. I'll start to rename my layers as we go. I have this dancing deer. I want to put him right about here as another element to divide up our background. We want him at least going to the very top and bottom of a frame. I'll parent him to the null object, just like everything else. I'll take the abstract background and then draw a mask. And this mask is going to be right at the beginning, until right about here on our deer. I will have to animate this mask because he is moving. To animate this mask, use the drop-down menu here, the mask drop-down, then go to Mask Path. At the very beginning of your video, you're going to click the Time Vary stopwatch, which will allow any changes we make to become keyframed. Now I'm going to press Command and right arrow to go to the next frame. Every time I do that, I'm just going to click and drag our mask, so the edge is still blocked by our dear friend here. So every time, you just want to make sure that the mask isn't shown, and that whatever you're using in the foreground acts as a divider. I'll take our city skyline background, and I'm going to move that right underneath our second background. And then I'll parent it to the null object. As you can see, our two different videos are seamlessly next to each other, with the deer in the middle. He's acting as the border between the two backgrounds. Going back to our ASAP video, there's lots and lots of different layers. This one is ASAP Rocky and Rihanna rotoscoped out using the rotobrush tool or otherwise. Then looped. The clip will play, then it is duplicated and reversed. This process is repeated to get a play forward, play reverse, play forward effect that creates the illusion that the clip is continuing, although it's only a few seconds long. As you can see, in the foreground, there are some buildings, and behind that, even more buildings in a different situation. Then behind that, the sky is removed and birds are placed in. This car is also used in the very front as a foreground element. It's just a matter of spending a lot of time cutting things out and placing them where you want them to be. You can loop things infinitely so they're long enough and they don't just disappear off screen in the middle of the panning. You can get as creative as you like with the elements you add here. Take a look at the books here. This is probably just a couple of photos. One photo has 3 books, the next has 2 books, the next has 0. Those photos were cut out either in After Effects or Photoshop and brought in as transparent PNGs. You can get pretty creative about how you're adding these elements. This clip right here implements real camera movement. Someone literally moves the camera near the lamp. Then the footage is brought in and using the rotobrush tool, the background is removed. If you take a look at these rose petals, you'll see little green artifacts around the edges. These are probably from a stock site, something like Envato Elements or another stock site like Pond 5. Clips like this come with a green screen, so the background can be easily removed using a key effect. However, this probably could have been done a little better, as you can still see some of the green screen. We don't have to build a whole composition for you to see how something like this can be done. As you can see, I'm adding background elements and adding foreground elements. You can add just as many elements as you like. For this tutorial, I'm using some elements that already have an alpha layer, meaning they don't have a background, so I can spend less time cutting things out and more time explaining. I'm going to place these flowers right here. Then I'll parent them to the null object. As you can see, I'm getting an expression error. In order to get around this issue, I'll just pre-compose the layer. Now, the expression error is gone. This solution probably isn't best practice, but it does put a band-aid over the problem, per se. You can even press R and rotate your clip. I'll place it upside down and throw it on top. Maybe I'll add a couple of copies of it. I'm going to rotate the second one back down here. So now, we have a couple instances of these flowers. I'm going to parent the second one to the null object as well. I want to use this smoky dragon video, but I know that it's very short in duration. So what we'll do is duplicate the clip and drag it to the end of the first clip. This element happens to have a perfect loop. So I'm just going to make 4 copies of this, place them end to end, and then pre-compose all of them into one clip. There's multiple ways to do a loop, but for the purposes of this video, this will do us just fine. I'm going to put that down here. I'm going to parent that to the null object, and we are getting another expression error here. So I'll pre-compose that again, and now it's working. In the video, there's a bunch of buildings as dividers. I grabbed this building PNG, and all you have to do is parent that to the null object, place it as a divider, and there you go. You have that working as a perfect divider between backgrounds. I'll move my dragon clip over a bit, and then behind this stuff, I'm going to add this water background and move it right about here. As before, just parent it to the null object. I'm aware that this looks a bit corny, but I'm hoping that it allows you to see how this concept works. Because these elements are from all over the web and shot on different cameras, they look pretty different from each other. That's creating some visual dissonance. So what I want to do is add some coloring and a little bit of grain to our entire composition. This will create a little bit more visual consistency. Ideally, you would shoot all your clips on the same camera or color grade them all separately as to have inherent visual consistency. But because we haven't done that, I'm going to show you how to create a little bit of artificial visual consistency. So I'll go in and add an adjustment layer. I'll go to Effects and Presets and type in Lumetri Color, and that's going to bring up a Lumetri Color effect. I'll go down to Creative and I'll find a LUT that I want to apply to the entire timeline. I'll use this LUT. It's called M31. I'll turn it down a little bit. Then I'll go under Creative and go under Faded Film and turn that up a little bit. This will add a matte effect to all of the shadows. Then I'll type in grain over here in the effects panel and click Add Grain. That's going to add a layer of grain to the top of our image. which is going to add that consistency throughout as well as give us a little bit more of an analog feel. You can still continue to make any changes you like at this point. Drag things around, change their position, rotate them, change their color. We're looking pretty good. I'm not going to go ahead and make an entire scene, because that would probably take quite a while. But I think we've accomplished what we came to do in terms of helping you understand this concept so you can create something just like the ASAP Rocky video. If this video helped you at all, please give us a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. I appreciate it so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day.